My name's Sarah, and I am a transformational coach, and I work a lot with people who are struggling with their physical or mental health. And I tend to find that there's a massive overlap with those things anyway. And I've been working with people in this way for about the last 6 years. And what's been so interesting about the way that I work is that the psychological understanding that I teach, which I know lots of people have been talking about on this event, is that it has an effect on the people around you, even if you don't teach it to them. So this is my lovely daughter, Emily, and she's 14, and she's grown up with it for the last 6 years, since you were 8. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything about, or do you want me to start by saying how I noticed that you were picking up on it?
Yeah, you can start, yeah.
So my first memory of Emily really starting to be impacted was that there was one summer a few years back. I think were you 11 or 10?
I would have been 11.
Yeah, and she was having what we called the track braces fitted, and it was in the summer, the start of the summer, and as always happens with these braces, they're fine when you have them fitted, and then in the middle of the night, everything gets quite painful when it starts moving. And Emily came to me in the middle of the night and said, "Mum, it is just so painful. You need to, and just give me whatever you've got to help with the pain." And she said, "Can I sleep with you?" So we did a bit of bed swapping, and she slept with me for the night. And we agreed that was going to happen for a few nights until it settled down. Anyway, the following night, I came to bed and I noticed she was listening to my iPod. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why she's using mine, because she has her own. And then it was only the next day, wasn't it, when we spoke about it, she had been listening to some Sydney Banks recordings. Now, for those that don't know, Sydney Banks had this incredible enlightened experience where he saw what it was that creates our psychological, spiritual experience. And so listening to his voice and listening to his recordings can be incredibly impactful. And again, this is what's so amazing about this understanding, is that it's not a cognitive learning. It kind of happens by osmosis. Even if you're not aware of it, you don't have to understand what's being said. And so it made me laugh, because in previous years, whenever she'd walked into a room or I was listening to Sid in the car, she'd be like, "Oh, this is so boring, turn it off." But she obviously heard something new, because she turned around to me and said, "Oh, I don't know if the pain went or if I just stopped noticing it." And I was like, wow, that's amazing, because of course we can't experience pain except through thought. And it kind of became your routine for going to bed, didn't it? That she started listening to Sid every night for 6 weeks solid. You know, at bedtime, she'd be like, "Where's the iPod?" or "Where's the charger?" And she changed so quickly and so dramatically. I mean, even teaching it with clients, I still never take for granted how almost miraculous it looks, and how massively impactful it can be. That it's to deal with stuff from an outside way, from your circumstances or from meddling with what's going on in your day-to-day life, is nowhere near as impactful as understanding what it is that creates your experience. And Emily obviously started to see that. And what was really fascinating for me was even after a week, you probably don't, this is what's so funny, you don't notice yourself changing because there's no effort to it. But it's so wonderful to observe. So her younger brother, who's 2 years younger than him, like all typical siblings, they have their moments where they get on and when they don't get on. The dynamic of their relationship really changed too. And they were being so nice to each other. I was like, what's going on? And I remember one saying, oh, I've left, I don't know, my shoes upstairs. And the young one said, oh, well, let me go and get that for you. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? It just felt like there was so much more love and connection in the house. And it was amazing to witness, absolutely amazing. So that's kind of, and I'll let Emily talk now from her side, but that was the biggest thing that I noticed early on, and it really blew my mind to witness it. And I'll just say one more thing, that when she went back to school at the start of the summer, she was starting senior school. Historically, when the 2 weeks before going back to school, she would always be quite anxious, and we used to have to actually do some kind of intervention through, I don't know, homeopathy or acupuncture or something to help calm her down before going back to school, because it would be such a big deal. And this time it was senior school, wasn't it? It was your first year at senior school. And she sailed through it, barely noticed it. So the change was so dramatic. But I think the thing that can be so easily missed with this is because most people are so used to having to work at changing themselves, or to put a lot of effort in. You can almost miss it because it looks so effortless to the person from the outside witnessing it, which is why you'll see Emily go, kind of when I'm talking about it, like it's just not a big deal. But it really is a big deal when you're able to provide the tools for so subtly to point your kids in the right direction, just to make life so much easier for them. So I've kind of talked enough now. I'm going to let you talk and share your side, and like what your memory is going back to, and you can say what you want about me, because I know you've said before it was quite a big difference witnessing me too change with this. So yeah, please.
I remember it slightly differently. I do remember going into you, and then I remember on the second night having the iPod, and I did put Sid on, but I wasn't listening to him. I was playing games on the iPod, and Mum came in and had the iPod, so I put on Sid and like I pretend to be asleep, and then I'm like just listening to him, right? Just because Mum's there and I'm pretending to be asleep and he's on, so she thinks I was listening to him. Then I actually become interested in it, and I think I just fell asleep listening to him, and I woke up and I don't know, I just felt different, and I kind of like, it happened again the next night, except this time it was kind of deliberate to listen to him, but originally it was, I don't know. But yeah, I still listen to him every night, don't I, really? Well, most nights, if I can't sleep, or so not much has changed there. And I remember, I thought you changed, not me. It was you that changed, not me. You're a lot nicer to me and stuff, and Will was not nicer, but I think it was you that changed.
It's so funny, isn't it? I think when you naturally drop out of that kind of that busy mind, it's just so much easier to connect with people that it almost doesn't matter who changed. I think we all did. I think we all did. That there was a nice feeling in the house just so much more of the time, and when you start to understand that we're all living in our own separate thought-generated reality, that you become so much more considerate of other people. As Emily said, I became nicer. I remember Balder Monroe, one of my mentors, saying to me, it can't help but niceness you up. And that's really stuck with me. Like, it does that to everybody, and it makes you more compassionate, more considerate, more understanding. It's not that you become a pushover by any means, but when you see bad behavior, or if you can rate something bad behavior, or you see when you're thinking straight, like in your kids, when they're playing up or not doing what you're asking, or you know it's not personal, you just don't take it personally. And so I mean, I think it'd be more helpful for people to hear what you have to say about it in terms of how I mean, obviously you can't say what it would have been like growing up without this understanding, but I mean, what do you notice, say, compared to your peers?
Well, I used to be a really anxious person, didn't I? And I used to worry about everything, and everything had to be perfect, and especially my hair, stuff for school. If I didn't have a set routine, everything would fall to pieces, kind of thing. And I think for the first couple of weeks, that whole summer holiday, it was just a lot easier. Everyone got on nicer. There was less friction in the house, wasn't there? And it was just generally more fun. Will was nicer, kind of. It was Will. And it was just, I don't know, it was nicer. And like, I mean, I still do get anxious, don't I? But it's not as much, and I get over it quicker, and I know it's not like coming from the situation, I guess.
Yeah, and it's funny, you even said that to me today, weren't you, when we were talking today? I can't remember exactly what it was.
Last night, actually.
Was it?
Yeah.
See, we have conversations like this all the time. It's not that, like, it's like, all, you know, we're still human. We both still get anxious sometimes. We both still worry. We both still get upset. But it doesn't, knowing that it's thought that's creating it, and it's not something that has power over you, either your circumstances or other people or the past or the future. It doesn't feel so intense or not for so long, and it doesn't feel so weighty and overwhelming that even if in the moment you can't see that whatever you're feeling is completely made up from thought. You kind of, over the years, both Emily and I know enough to not go in that direction any further.
Well,
so most of the time, yeah. So how do you think that's played out for you? So with school or friendships?
I've definitely taken stuff less personally, because I remember at the end of that year when I left year 6, my best friend had just moved away to a different country, and I didn't have a phone at the time, so there was no way to kind of communicate really, was there? Or I got one in the summer, that summer, didn't I? So it was kind of like, before that would have made me like so like anxious and upset going back to school, and I still was upset and I missed her and stuff, but I got back to school and I just kind of got on with it, and everything was just so much easier, and I made new friendships. I mean, they weren't people that I'd be friends with for the rest of my life, but I enjoyed hanging out with them, and everything seemed like less of a big deal, didn't it? And homework and stuff, and the fact that I was now in senior school and I'd have GCSEs coming up, it wasn't as big a deal as I think it would have been if I hadn't started listening to Sid or been aware of whatever was going on, kind of thing. And I think I just dealt with stuff a lot better, didn't I? I mean, I still did have ups and downs, but I got over everything a lot quicker, which is amazing considering year 7 wasn't exactly an amazing year for me. But
and this is it. This isn't about pretending life becomes so wonderful and you're never going to have a problem again. You know, for both of my kids, we've still had challenges over the years. But it's really interesting that when those challenges come along, I don't know, I guess, you know, we don't really call it bullying, do we? If there's been any kind of harassment from other kids at school, or difficult behaviour, or worrying about exams or anything like that, it's really obvious to me that there are times where we both get tricked into thinking the stress is coming from those things, and it has a horrible, it's just not great. But then if one of us drops out of seeing it, and frequently Emily does it before me, so if she's had a problem with a friendship at school and I'm not seeing it right, I can get really upset, and then like I could have a sleepless night, and then the next day Emily's already bounced back, like she's already like, oh, I'm so over that. Like, and I'm like, then I get a real wake up, like, oh my goodness, of course it wasn't what was going on at school that was creating that, and my busy mind and that overthinking. it was the way I was thinking about it. And Emily seen through it really quickly and like, what am I doing? I've been fooled again. But it's so obvious to me that there have been certain things where there have been challenges that have been there for a long period of time, and we can both go in and out of thinking that it's this huge issue to one where it doesn't seem so overwhelming and we can just manage it when we see it for what it is. It doesn't mean that you don't want to take action about certain stuff or there aren't steps to take. It's not, I say to people, it's not like a get out of jail free card. Just because you see that thoughts creating your experience, it doesn't make it acceptable for you just to ignore certain things that are going on that need dealing with in your life. So I don't want people to think it's like that, but what it does do is give you this enormous, and I've seen it in Emily, gives you this enormous bounce back quality and this resilience that nothing ever seems insurmountable when you're seeing it right, when you're seeing, and that's the most important thing for me that I think I hope I have most of the time passed on to my children, is that they understand what's creating their felt experience, and they never have to be scared of anything because they're only feeling their own thought. And I think that's given both of you a level of maturity and confidence and resilience that it's been wonderful to watch them grow up. But yeah, I don't want to say that we don't ever have problems or issues, or but I don't know from your point of view what.
I mean, we still fall out a lot.
Oh, we do, yeah.
But I mean, like, we get over it quickly. Like, whereas once upon a time, if we fell out, that'd be us done for the evening, you know, or we'd all go off to our separate rooms, kind of thing. That'd be it. The next morning, it'd be a bit like, kind of like, still have that attitude. But I think these days, like, what will happen is we'll have a falling out. An hour later, we'll both be sitting there and be like, yeah, I know I did something wrong. Kind of, we'll make up and then we'll go watch something together, or. Like, we just get over it, don't we? It's like,
yeah, and sometimes I see it happen in minutes or seconds these days as well, whereas it would have lingered a lot longer before. So it's done wonders for our relationship too, hasn't it? Yeah. So I don't know, is there anything that you want to ask?
So I wonder if you could just maybe explain a little more what it is, what the it is that's making the difference. So it may be that people who are listening, I mean, obviously I understand, but maybe some of the people who are listening don't understand quite what it is that's made the difference. So I don't know if you could explain, Emily, what the difference is for you. For example, when you were saying that you have a falling out.
Well, before, I'd take it very personally, wouldn't I? If you said something, say you're in a bad mood and you said something, for the rest of the evening I'd be like, oh, I can't believe she did that to me. I'd kind of like, you'd get the mentality of victim. Like, I feel like we as a society play the victim a lot, don't we? Whereas, like, I don't know, it just kind of, you just realise how it's not directed at you. It's kind of what's going on for them. And it's a bit like, oh, they must have been having a bad day. Or even just that it wasn't aimed, it wasn't intentional, or I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's like say you'd say something and you would have said it on like the off chance of, well, you would have meant it a different way, and I'd take it very personally, wouldn't I? And then it'd be like, I'd hold on to that, and then I don't know, I can't explain it, it's quite hard to explain, but I would just.
So why do you think it is that you see it so differently now, and you notice that it's not personal?
Well, because I see you do that, don't I? Because you kind of, I don't know, whatever you do, I kind of pick up on. So it's like, oh, well, she's not, because like what first happened is when she first started learning about it, it would drive me crazy. No matter what I did, she would not get cross at me. She would just kind of like no matter what I did to irritate her, she would just kind of go over her head. And I don't know, it just really annoyed me. I couldn't get a reaction out of you. And I guess it was like, I'm coming across as a bad person here. I'm not normally, but I don't know, it just like, and then I was like, oh, well, if she's not doing that, then like, I don't know. And then I feel like I kind of started picking up on it, and it just, it just kind of became like the way we handle things.
Yeah, and I think it's that thing of when you see other people having a much easier time and getting over stuff really quickly, it's like, oh, maybe that looks like a good route to go. And actually it's brought it up for me what Emily's talking about. I remember really clearly and this is what I'm saying about this, and I love why you asked that, Anne, because for people watching or listening, it's hard to explain how impactful this can be, because as I say to my clients, like even after one conversation, they can start to notice their behaviour change. And there's no effort involved in it. When you start to see that 100% of your experience is coming from thought, like there's no other way to experience anything, then you function so much better. And it kind of just seems like a good idea to start with until you start to see it play out. And so I remember it was so I just started learning, and I think it was on a Sunday, and I was just in and out of Emily's room, just putting laundry away. And as Emily says, she's not a bad person. Even as adults, we have our tantrums and we have our days where we're not doing so well. But she was having a bad day, and she was being quite shouty, and she was clearly quite irritated. And I was just walking in and out of the room, and I was like, and again, this wasn't anything I was doing. I was just noticing my experience. It was like, oh, this is interesting. This feels really different. Why am I not shouting back? Why? I mean, if you'd put me on a blood pressure cuff, it wouldn't have moved. It was like, oh, this is interesting. I've not experienced it this way before, where she's gotten really upset and angry and irritated and put the full force of it at me, or tried to, and it's just like, it just not even registered with me. It's like, wow, this is incredible. So I was more interested in, like, wow, this is how it really works, than I was in getting involved in whatever was going on in Emily's story. It's not that I wasn't feeling compassionate, but I think I kind of described it to my husband, like, there's this thing when your kids are really struggling, and they struggle when they go into believing that what they're feeling comes from something other than thought, like she was in that moment. And the last thing we want to do is step into the illusion with them and make it more real and make more drama. And it just made so much sense to me in that moment to not do that. Like, that was the most unhelpful thing I could possibly do. And I remember you saying to me, I think it was a few months later, saying to me, I was so irritated with you, because it was like, what's going on? Why is she not shouting back? Like, why is she not reacting? And I think this is one of the things I say to people, and certainly in partnerships as well, you know, whether it's spouses or intimate partners, that it can be quite unnerving, because you're so used to the person showing up in a certain way, and that's your familiarity with them, that even if they're behaving in a nicer way, it can be quite unnerving. And I remember you saying to me, the first time I did that, it drove you crazy.
The first time?
Yeah.
I think it was more than the first
was
time.
It? Well, I remember you saying quite soon after, you loved the fact that I didn't step into the craziness with you, that it was just so helpful to have someone who didn't get into the made up story that they were already in about what was creating their experience. So I remember so clearly that I will never forget that. I even remember where we were standing and what was going on, and that was kind of like a pivotal moment for me of, wow, it really does work this way. Because the illusion that it works the other way is so convincing. You know, I work with so many parents, and it's like, but when but when they're doing this, or when they're doing that, or when they don't empty the dishwasher, or when are you telling me that doesn't make me irritated or angry? It's like, well, I know it kind of looks that way, but it's actually not possible, because this is a paradigm. And when you're dealing with a paradigm, it works 100% one way, the same way all the time. And I would, anyone listening, I would say, you know, explore that for yourself. Don't take my word for it. You can, and that's what I did when I first came across this understanding. And I just kind of like, well, what about this, or what about this, and looking at more and more examples of it, and just seeing that actually it was always, it has to be, there's no other way to do it but to experience your moment to moment being, of being human, through anything except through thought. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything that you want to share about what's been really helpful for you over the years, or
I mean, once I got over the fact that you didn't get mad, that was kind of helpful, because I could kind of, I would get over it quickly, because I'd be shouting but I wouldn't get a reaction, so it'd be like, oh, well, what's the point, kind of thing. So I know, I guess I kind of got over stuff. I think that's probably when I started getting over stuff quicker as well. Like, I don't know, that's such a good demonstration of not that you don't have to teach other people, that they actually pick it up much better. They pick it up. If you know, I've heard so many parents saying, I tried to teach them, you know, that their experience is all coming from thought, and actually Emily picked it up much better with you not telling her, but just demonstrating it. And even then you were not demonstrating it deliberately. You were just, you were just surprised by it too. Mm. And also a great demonstration of how each of us is living in our own reality, our own thought created reality, so that Emily could see that you were having your own reality, which was completely different from what she'd imagined it would be. You know, she was thinking that you should be shouting back, and actually you were having a different reality inside, because you were taking notice of your thinking in a completely different way. So really, really good demonstration. I love it. I love that.
Yeah, and it's the same way as I explain it to my clients. With your kids, you don't, when they were young, you didn't demonstrate how to walk or demonstrate how to talk. The most impactful things that it's kind of like the do as I say and not as I do doesn't really work. It just does not work. You have to model it yourself, and that's by far the most impactful way for it to happen. And it's interesting. I don't think I've ever taught it directly. I mean, we
have discussions about it. If I'm interested in a certain area, well, I'll notice something, then we'll come and ask you about it.
Yeah, and I actually have to say that I have to put my hand up as guilty. That first summer when Emily was so impacted, I was like, oh, this is great. My work is done as a parent. And then I think it was after about 6 weeks, she'd been in this blissful state for about 6 weeks, and then she had a week of just being really irritated again, really irritated, and it was on a Saturday morning after a week of it, and she was being particularly unkind to her brother, and I just said, hey, Emily, come talk to me. So we went and sat in another room. And
I don't remember this.
Do you know? No. And I said to her, tell me what's going on. You know, and I always find that the thing with parenting I've been able to come from that, not all the time, but from that neutral place, but so much more often, to just not assume that I know what's going on. Like, oh, there she is, she's just been horrible. Like, to really find out what's going on. And it brought tears to my eyes, because she said something along the lines of, I thought that was it. I thought I was going to be happy forever. I thought that for want of a better word, I'd reached nirvana, that I was in this lovely feeling and I thought it was going to last forever. And so then I did actually say, you're not the first to think that that's going to happen, or the last. That it seems like it's about that. It seems that it's about the happy ever after, but actually what it's really about is knowing that your experience is always coming from thought. That's way more powerful than anything else anyone could offer you, and that the human experience is one of a whole range of moods and emotions and feelings. It's not like it just goes happy, 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 happy. You know, it's happy, sad, anxious, worried, overjoyed, funny, joyous. But your capacity to feel all those different experiences, for me personally, and I think we would both say this, that you are able to embrace those experiences more fully, because you know they're just coming from thought. They're not saying anything horrible about your circumstances, because I find that so many people can live in this narrow band of emotions because they think it's reflective of their relationship, their work, what's going on in their life. So they feel restricted and scared to perhaps worry, or to feel guilty, or to feel angry, but you can feel anything fully, knowing that it's self-created. There's so much freedom in that, and I think it enables more of a childlike quality to come out, doesn't it? That
I thought you said I wasn't sure.
But with both of us now, when I say childlike, I don't mean childish. There's that. Certainly in our house, there's a lot more fun. There's a lot more laughter. There's a lot more lightness. You don't take stuff so seriously, except when you get caught out, and you do. Yeah, Dad's a big learning for us. Poor Dad. But so I don't know what you want to share in terms of.
We definitely have more fun. I think Dad takes stuff less seriously as well, because he used to take stuff really seriously, didn't he? So I think it kind of affected everyone. I think we all kind of got into it, because Will got into it recently as well, didn't we?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's interesting. And he's 12, so on nights when, because he frequently gets coughs. They're not as bad as they were when he was younger. But if he has difficulty getting to sleep, he will sit and listen to some recordings as well, because any of the recordings around teaching the paradigm, the principles, is I remember hearing Jan Chipman saying that it's always pointing you back to your true self, like your true nature, underneath, as I see it, underneath all of those personal thoughts of the busy mind and the stuff that we make up, that stuff kind of goes quiet, and you're able to really connect to your, whether you want to call it on a soul level or a spirit level, that we've all experienced those moments of feeling really anxious about something. I don't know, maybe in the middle of the night, and the next day you're like, what was that about? It just doesn't seem relevant anymore, and it really points to the fact that it's thought. Like, it's not, because your circumstances are still the same. And another way that I really I explain it as well, and we've talked about it before, is that when you dream, that's made up of the same stuff. That's made up of thought. And I have experienced just as strong emotions from dreaming as I ever have done in my day-to-day life. They're really powerful, and it's made up of the same thing. And it's a really good way to see that it is definitely thought that's creating your feeling. Definitely. So I guess I know we kind of we talk about anything in our house. There's nothing that's off limits. That we talk about social media, self-image, all of the stuff that comes up for teens, isn't it?
Yeah.
That I know we talked about it when there was a lot of media coverage about, was it self-harming and suicide, and that for us, where there's no subject as a parent that I'm not scared to talk about with Emily. And I just notice when we're talking about it, if I get panicky in any way about it, or I get scared about it, it's just such a relief to know that I'm creating that. And I just the same way as that experience in Emily's bedroom, like, oh, this is really interesting, I'm not reacting. Equally, I do that, oh, I'm reacting. Okay, I know I'm not seeing it right in this moment. And so I'm really always calibrating myself in every conversation around any delicate subjects like that, because we have talked about it, haven't we, a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say about it, Emily?
I don't know, because it just seems part of general discussion. Like, we have these topics in the car kind of thing. Like, I don't know, it's just like, it's not a big deal. I think because you don't make it a big deal, it doesn't, like, not as in it's not important, but as in, like, it's not a topic that needs to be approached with caution. It's just kind of like something else that we talk about, isn't it? It's not like, or like, how do I go about this? Like, if I have a question, I will ask you whether. Like,
yeah, and we've talked about self-harming, we've talked about suicide, because I know you've had friends, haven't you, that have talked about it to you,
yeah.
or and it, you know, it is really common, and it's so. And this is what's been so wonderful about teaching this and being able to bring my kids up in this understanding that I'm able to help them and support them and listen, and without putting my personal story into it or putting any kind of fear or anxiety into it, that it's just. And it's not because you've had your ups and downs, as has your brother, haven't you? And for me too, as a parent, I would rather that they didn't have the downs, being really selfish. But I just remind myself all the time that life is going to be like this for them, and I'd far rather that they saw that this is part of it. This is part of being here. This is part of living, and that they have the ability to deal with anything. And I've seen that. I've really seen that. So yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask, Anne? Or?
There was a couple of things that I noticed. One was that I heard someone else the other day saying that very small children love listening to Sid. Which you think, really? You know, that sounds a bit strange, but apparently children and young, not so much teens, because they start thinking about it like you did, Emily, you know, started, well, I don't know, this is boring, and, you know, start putting thought on it. But younger children apparently are very, really enjoy listening to Sid and get a lot out of it. But also, as Emily then did, once you do start listening to it, they quite often fall asleep and don't even don't consciously know what they've heard, which is very interesting, I think.
Sorry. That's why I like listening to it, because I use it to fall asleep, and that way I'll feel calmer in the morning, even though I didn't physically, intentionally listen to anything. It just kind of sinks in, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, that just goes to show the effortlessness of it again. You know, it's reminding us of something that we already know, and so we don't have to try and we don't have to make an effort to do it, which is another great thing about it. Yeah,
and it's wonderful to come from that place of just seeing that no one's broken. I think so many kids think, oh, there must be something wrong with me, or particularly if they're troubled by any things we've been talking about, like suicide or self-harm, or that and we know, don't we, Anne, it's epidemic proportions right now. It's so sad. And that seeing, if only they were to see that they, well, as Sid very famously said, if only people were not scared, learn to not be scared of their experience, that in itself would change the world. I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact, but really that's what it's all about. Just
well,
seeing.
It is once you realize that your feelings are only coming from thought, there's nothing to be scared of, is there? It's like, and that you don't have to act on every thought that you have, and they're just like you know, like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Oh, I don't, you know. So in fact, it just reminded me, because I was talking to Michael Neal last night, and he was telling his story about when he got those suicidal feelings. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah,
I know the story.
He was talking about how he was seriously suicidal, had suicidal thoughts for years, seriously having suicidal thoughts. And it was only when he had an experience where it was sort of a psychotic experience where he thought that he was going to die and suddenly realized he didn't want to, that he realized it was thought. It was like, oh, yeah. And something woke him up to that. So it's an interesting story to hear. But yes, once people realize that experience, those thoughts, you know, so many people have I've had suicidal thoughts. Lots of people have suicidal thoughts. That doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about, or that you have to do anything about them. And that's pretty important, really. So I was going to ask Emily one more thing, which was when you spoke about Emily going to school and having been really anxious beforehand. So Emily, what did you notice? Did you notice anything different when you were?
I think the point was that I didn't notice anything. I didn't really think about it. It wasn't, I don't know, I didn't even notice it till probably like a week after school started. I was like, oh, I'm back at school, right? That's cool, I guess. I don't know. I think the point was that I didn't have any thought around it, or I didn't really think about it. It just kind of happened. Like, went back to school. I think it was more a case of I didn't see what worrying about it would do, because I'd be going back anyway, whether I worried about it or not. So I don't know. Just
it's funny. I remember Keith Blevins telling this story, and again, I'm probably not retelling it very well. It's years ago I heard it, but he said it's like the old man who lived right next to Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, and one night he sat bolt upright in bed at 1 minute past midnight because they were cleaning the bell and it hadn't rung, like, because it was so quiet. Like you like, for I think what Emily's saying and what my experience has been is it's like you notice you get quieter. You notice you've dropped a lot of unhelpful thought, and it's not like any other kind of therapy or coaching will get people to go into the detail of what they are thinking about, like, and play there. Whereas this is about really seeing how your experience is created. Like, and I find, well, always going in that direction is way more helpful, way more impactful. So it's kind of, and I hope that's kind of come across in all the stories we've shared. It's a noticing how your psychological experience is playing out differently to how it once was. I think that's what Emily's just really beautifully described, that it's like, well, I just noticed it was really different, because I think if you ever said to someone, stop worrying, that just never works, does it? Okay, I'll stop worrying. It's like, I often say to people, you know, if they think they're having relationship problems, and I've been with Emily's dad for 20 years now, and you know, I would love to have been fully in love with him that whole time. Like, if that was a choice, why would I not have chosen to do that? Why would I ever want to wake up on any day and feel like he was irritating me? I would never choose that. but the illusion's really powerful that other people can make you feel stuff. But I know he can not have done anything different from one day to the next, but on one day I can think he's the most amazing person ever and how lucky I am, and on another day it can feel like he's so irritating and annoying, and it's so freeing to see that it's not that it's like, oh yeah, there it goes again. There it goes again, it's fooled me again. So my experience looked like it was happening one way, but I know that's not possible. It's just not possible. So
talking about your relationship with Dad, I think growing up with this and having your relationship with him, and I don't know, I just feel like it makes me better in relationships. Like, I feel like, I mean, I'm at that age, you know, where people are starting to get boyfriends and girlfriends, and I feel like I'm probably the only one that doesn't really get thinking about it. Like, I don't pay attention to the thoughts of like insecure. I mean, of course everyone does sometimes, but like nervousness, insecurity, that kind of. Whereas everyone else gets so caught up in each little thought that they have. It's like each thought that they have to listen to. Whereas I feel like, I don't know if I'm explaining this well or anything.
you're doing it beautifully.
I feel like growing up with it, it just means that I deal with, I mean, romantic relationships, friendship relationships, you know, just generally. I just think I deal with stuff better growing up with it, I feel like.
And I think that's a really interesting point. And it's often, again, if I work with people who are perhaps going through divorce, and there's this big misunderstanding that it's going to damage the children. Of course, you can never damage anyone, but I find that whether the parent, what's really key is not whether the parents are still together or not. It's like you could have a child in a household where the parents are still together, but if they don't get this understanding, their home environment would be more challenging. Whereas if you have parents who were separating or divorcing and understood this, the whole process of that would just make it so easy for the child or the children. So to me, it's about that, exactly what Emily's just described. Again, it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's kind of what you're doing at home, how you're modelling it at home, and you can't fake it. You cannot fake it. Like, you either see it and you live it, or you don't. It's that simple.
Yeah, and it's what you've spoken about is that it's just so effortless. I love that. I mean, that's what I was expecting from what you described about what happened to Emily, that she was going to say, I just didn't notice. You know, I just didn't notice until it had happened. So that, yeah, and that's how it happens so much of the time, isn't it?
And I just want to say one more thing as being an observer. I mean, it's also really obvious, not just for Emily, but for anybody, that when you don't have a busy mind and loads of insecure thinking, because insecure thinking does create a really busy mind. And what I mean by that is, as Emily said, it's not that you don't ever have negative thoughts, negative feelings, but you understand that you're creating that. And there's nothing more attractive than someone who is confident. Well, it looks like confidence is an added thing, but actually confidence is the result of seeing this. That's our natural state, isn't it? Whereas people think, oh, it's something you learn, and I think a lot of people get confused because Emily comes over.
Yeah,
I'll let you talk.
People are always like, oh, I don't know how you do it, you're so confident, you just don't care what people think, kind of thing. But I really do. I'm actually really, like, not an insecure person, because I don't think that's a thing, but I do have insecure thought. I just don't pay attention to it. So it's not that I'm a confident person, it's just that I only choose to pay attention to the confident thoughts.
Yeah, so. And it's interesting, isn't it? So other people will interpret it like that. Of course, that's enormously attractive, isn't it? We know that. It's the same with any scenario. The people that we're drawn to are the people that aren't carrying around all of those insecure thoughts. So
yeah, and like you say, that's actually your natural state of being. And just, and that's great that Emily's doing that. That's showing her natural state of being, which is, as you say, much more attractive. Yeah, yeah. And once you know that you don't have to take any notice of those thoughts, it gets a lot easier, doesn't it? So that's, yeah, brilliant. So that's lovely. Thank you very much. And there will be a link to where people can get in touch with you, but also if people are watching, they can leave comments and questions underneath the video too, which I will also pass on to the two of you. And also there's a link to where to get in touch with you, Sarah. So if people do want to, they can ask more questions and find out more through getting in touch with you that way. So that's been really, really good. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
I'm sure that's going to make a big difference to a lot of people. So thanks very much.
And I just wanted to say, Anne, for anyone that does want to reach out to me, my website's really simple. It's just sarahphip.com, and Phip is PHIPP.com. And if they go to the free resources on the page, there's a parenting web class there as well. Now I know, again, that's from the parents' point of view, but Emily's also done another web class with me where we've discussed a lot of teenage issues that people might find of interest, in which case they can just drop me an email, sarah@sarahphip.com, and I'll pass through the link for them to view that as well.
Wow, perfect. That's really good. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for being here. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.